Dynamic rendering, should you still use it? Dynamic rendering can be an ideal and temporary solution. Read about when you should use it and what questions you need to ask before you do. Dynamic rendering can effectively solve your JavaScript SEO problems, but Google advises it should be a work-bound rather than a long-term solution, as it adds an external layers of complexity when building your website. It's recommended to implement hydration, static rendering, or server-side rendering instead. Both Bing and Google deem dynamic rendering important enough to announce as a quick fix to Google search crawling and indexing problem with JavaScript. What is dynamic rendering? Dynamic rendering combines the best of both worlds by presenting your JavaScript content differentially. Full rendered content is sent to search engines, while regular visitors sense with normal. How dynamic rendering works? Implementing dynamic rendering can be challenging, resources intensive, and time consuming. The dynamic rendering process typically works by serving the whole JavaScript experience to user and the HTML files to search bots. And external dynamic renders such as requests from crawlers are routed to the render which server as a translation of the content suitable for the crawlers. A human user request is handled normally, sending them to the website. You can also use this part of the dynamic rendering process to determine if they require desktop or mobile content. What problems can dynamic rendering solve? Dynamic rendering helps Google crawl and index your website more quickly by picking out the relevant content generated by JavaScript. Should you still use dynamic rendering? Dynamic rendering is still an excellent match for large JavaScript heavy sites that constantly evolve, but only as a short term fix. Is dynamic rendering cloaking? Google describes cloaking as sending different contents or URLs to human users and search engines with the intent to manipulate search engine queries. Therefore, these are very important to do this. If your bots if your bots have difficulties with JavaScript generated content, use dynamic rendering to detect them and so deliver a server render version without its summary. Is your website indexable? Does your website use JavaScript for some of its all content? These are very important to work to do us.